unless I missed the email.
That would be me doing the prayer today.
Oh, thank you, Dolores.
Yeah.
I sent you an email. I thought you said thank you.
I did.
No.
I probably did, and I got, you know, it's
And-
been a little hectic with me lately, so,
I'm sorry.
Mitchell Harper.
Yeah, I'll take it.
you know, cleaning during COVID, it's not
Thank you.
easy. I apologize.
All right, we ready?
We're
Ready.
ready.
Well, let us pray. As we come through this time of Thanksgiving and giving thanks for what we have, let us be always mindful of other Rotarians who are not doing so well. Particularly, let's keep in our prayers the passing of Mark Waltz, his wife Kay, in her struggles also, and to Mark's daughters as they care for aging parents. We give thanks for all of them. Let us be hope that all can go well and go strong in the fight against COVID-19 as we pass through this, and hopefully everybody that gets through and comes out the other side better for it. Let us give thanks for all the work of Rotary and that we all do today. And we ask this in thy heavenly name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Sorry, I kind of screwed up the beginning. 4-way test. Is it the truth?
Truth.
It's
It's
a
a
fair
fair
to
to
all
all
concerned. Will build goodwill and better
Better friendships will be
beneficial.
beneficial to
All
all
concerned.
concerned. Wow. One good thing about Rotarians, they kind of live that, and that's kind of exciting. So, all good. Hey, does anybody know what this Saturday is?
Saturday.
Well, it's Poinsettia Day. Yeah, Poinsettia Day. Yeah.
It's the day
So
after Friday.
I'll be over at the it's the day after Friday, and guess what else I found out?
What's that?
I want to surprise you guys. It's the day before Sunday.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Stuff's
I
coming
am
at you
so
fast.
impressed with your intelligence.
Jan, get in. I got a word a little
Yes, sir.
bit ago. Poinsettia sales will close noon tomorrow.
Noon tomorrow. That means
Yep.
they have some options
Yep, we,
to get some more. I thought it was over, but that's even better.
I just got the word from Jody that it's going to close tomorrow at noon.
Yeah, we got to 103, so we got to our goal.
Great.
Awesome. My daughter works in a couple facilities in San Diego. She's a speech pathologist. And one of the things I love about this child is she decided not to become like one for like a school, but she really wanted to get into the medical side. So she's working in a couple facilities, and she reached out to me. She said, "Hey, Dad, do you think you could write a couple like holiday cards for some of the people here because they don't really have that much interaction?" And I thought, wow, I know people that can help me do that. Are Rotarians. Picture these people right now. They're shut-ins. They don't really get in that much interaction. I myself, after this meeting, I'm going over to Maple Glen gift store, and I'm going to twist his arm a little to see if I can get a discount on a bunch of cards, because I think it's important. And I just like to solicit some of you Rotarians. If you're interested, please reach out to me because I'd like to facilitate that.
Send the names out to us.
You got it, buddy. You got it. Because all I'm going to do is I'm not even going to have a name. I'm going to do is just maybe have some beautiful cards and maybe stamp it with some holiday stuff on it so they can open it up and feel like they're loved. Because right now in those facilities, it's hard. I read something the other day that really broke my heart, where they don't tell people when they pass away, but they notice they're not around anymore. Like they said, you know what? The woman that used to feed the birds, we don't see her anymore. And that's what they've been realizing. People have been just dropping off, but they're not mentioning it. And then this is what's happening in some of these facilities. And I'm only saying this to my Rotarian friends because you guys have heart and you understand what this is about. So that's where I'm leading on that one. So Linda, I know you're not available to talk that much, but do you want to mention something about the pickup of the poinsettias? I don't know if you could talk.
Sure. So on Saturday, the pickup is at the Borough Building, the Ambler Borough Building. And we're going to have the poinsettias actually in the gym inside, but we'll have a Rotarian out in the parking lot that will then communicate with someone in the gym, and we'll be bringing the poinsettias to your car. So it'll be kind of contactless pickup. So I thought I'll email everybody that is picking up poinsettias my cell phone number. So if you want to text ahead of time and say, you know, we'll be there in 5 minutes or a half hour, if you give us a heads up, that's great. And if you don't, that's not a problem. You'll just tell Jan, myself, Brenda, and Diane will be distributing the poinsettias. So
Yeah.
we're going to minimize contact as much as possible.
The diagnostics are fine. It's just one of those weird things. Everything will e-file.
Any
I have
questions?
I'm actually
everything
looking
together.
forward
I
to
have
it.
envelopes back at my desk. But
And
Mitchell and Peter are
Hello?
both executors. Who did you want to sign?
And if
I
you,
mean, I'll send copies to
at
both.
the
Maybe I
end,
should
if you're
insert
not
something.
talking, if you want to mute yourself,
where everything-
otherwise I'll mute.
Peter,
or-
Mitch will take
try
forever.
that. Hello?
All right, so I'll just.
Oh, whoever's talking, if you can mute yourself, thank you, love.
Well,
That happens sometimes. Linda is not at her home right now. She's at a facility. So she's taking care of her daughter.
Linda, what time on
You didn't hear.
Saturday?
the pickup, I believe, is 10 to 1.
Thank you.
Yep. And if you're not able to pick up for some reason, I'm more than happy to make some deliveries later that day or the next day.
And I'm good for deliveries too. Alrighty.
Okay, then.
So I actually have some poinsettias I might be giving away because my cats have been eating some of the flowers in the house. Unless I want to get rid of my cats. Does anybody know if they're really poisonous?
They are poisonous.
They are, yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's open for discussion. Some people.
Yes, that's what I heard. We're gonna find out actually.
believe-
If I have new kittens at the beginning of the year, no, I'm just teasing. I'm gonna do that to my babies. Clint's not on here, is he?
No,
Good. I'd lose my man card if I talk about my cats in front of Clint. He just destroys that. So, where's my buddy Eric? Eric,
Yo,
we got a good-looking man over there, by the way, Mr. Boggs. I'm a little jealous of his hair, to be honest with you. Hey, Bill, you there, buddy? He's doing something.
I'm here.
I'm here.
Hey, bud, how are you? I love that thing on the wall you have behind your left shoulder.
It's a
Left,
mattress.
right? What is
That is
that thing on the wall?
That is I'm down in Palm Beach. And my beloved Jane sold her New York apartment when we moved in together 10 years ago. And she took a small part of the proceeds and bought this apartment in Palm Beach. It's really a great life. Anyway, we moved into the apartment and there's this big wall back here, right? So I'll fill this out a little bit so you can turn and see. So we knew we were going to put something on the wall because it's a pretty wide wall. And we were just wandering around in Lake Worth across the intercoastal and went into one of these antique stores. And there in the back room is this work of art. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh my God, that'll fit right on the wall. If I can talk her into this, we'll avoid buying some cheap, made in China art or something like that. So I said, take a look at this. And what it is, it's a box spring from a mattress. And on the box spring are mounted reflective convex mirrors. So it actually reflects a mirror in the entire room. And it's a one of a kind piece, but it's not expensive. I mean, but maybe you would call it folk art or something like that, but that's what it is.
It looks like it goes beautifully on that wall.
Pardon me?
Go ahead, Eric. Introduce
Yeah.
our friend.
Let me introduce Bill a little bit. Bill, before I introduce you, we are recording this session.
Good.
Is it okay with you? We post it on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. We can,
Okay,
you can,
fine.
if you give me a link, in addition to putting it on YouTube, I'll put it on my YouTube channel, Bill Boggs TV, which
Okay.
has a lot of stuff I like. I like to keep adding things to that.
Sure.
So that's good.
I'll get that to you, Arnold. Bill and I met back in high school.
Right.
He was one of the leaders in the school, was always somebody that you looked up to and admired. You knew he was going to go places. And he's made it. I don't know how many of you, I told you again, look at YouTube and see the interviews he did. I've got a list, probably 100 people that I saw, and I wrote down, I made the list, 2 pages of it. And there's some pretty darn good interviews. Bill has done a very nice job, and I'm going to just let Bill go ahead and tell you his story a little bit.
Okay. Well, first, I want to, Eric, thank you very much for inviting me. We haven't seen each other, I don't think, since 1958. So, you know, a couple of years went by there. And also, I love Ambler. The times I've been out in that part of the county, it's just, I love the downtown area, the walking area in Ambler. Well, so Eric, thank you for the introduction. Essentially, what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about how I made my childhood dream come true. When I was about 5 years old, my parents, for whatever reason, we lived in a row house in Frankfurt before moving to Mayfair. Must have had a couple of extra dollars, and they bought their little boy a radio. And this was really the most seminal experience in my life. It just changed my world. I would lie in bed at night, you know, listening to it. And this was radio when there were comedy shows on the radio, dramatic shows on the radio, game shows on the radio. This is 1946, you know, well before television, before commercial television. And for whatever reason, I was captivated by the men on the radio who were interviewing people and talking to people. And a lot of these are kind of forgotten names today: Arthur Godfrey, Don McNeil, Art Linkletter. And for whatever reason, around age 5, 6, I thought I knew I'm going to work. I'd grow up and I'd be a man and I had to have a job someday. And I said I wanted to be like the men on the radio. So I am one of those extraordinarily lucky, blessed people who, with probably some help from a higher power and luck, a lot of hard work, right, being able to reinvent myself, made that childhood dream come true. I grew up and I became a talk show host, a little bit of a bio. I started my career right in Philadelphia at WCAU and then KYW, went down to North Carolina, where I had a syndicated show, Southern Exposure, and where we'll talk a little bit about my book. That's where the book starts. And then went up to New York for 13 years. I did Midday Live, 90-minute live interview show at a time when the local shows had not been yet eclipsed by like Regis and Kathy Lee and stuff like that, and had major league guests come by to promote their movies and books and stuff like that. After 13 years, and while doing that, I for the production company, produced a show called Comedy Tonight, which I host. Was the first show in the history of television that just had stand-up comedians. I did a weekend show. We produced music shows with Bobby Short, Frank Zappa, Mink DeVille. And after 13 years of Midday, I dropped that. And since then, some of the things I've done, I've spent 10 years on the Food Network. There are clips of all this stuff on Bill Boggs TV on YouTube, which is free. Subscribe. And I was executive producer of everybody's favorite screaming talk show, the Morton Downey Jr. Show, and worked for Showtime covering boxing, a couple shows on the Travel Channel. And the last show, television show that I hosted was for the AARP, was from my generation. And all this essentially started for me at Lincoln High School in Northeast Philadelphia. And one of the things that I think is extremely important that helped me enormously So I had good parents, an excellent education. I went from Lincoln to Penn. Of course, it was much easier to get in then. I'm sure I couldn't even qualify for a community college now, but I was somehow able to get into Penn. And something about my childhood, and this is something I want to share here, something about my childhood and my parents and my experience in school developed an enormous confidence in me, that I had confidence. I don't mean cocky confidence. I got a part of me that's as insecure as anybody on the panel here, I assure you. But confidence that if I were approaching something within my skill set, that I could attempt to do it. So I really believe in letting children know that they can have a dream and that they can manifest that dream, that it's possible to make those dreams come true, which I was lucky enough to do. At the same time, I think as a parent, based on my experience with interviewing people and my own friends who now have, some of my younger friends have children and grandchildren, not to overpraise children. You know, the children are going to fail. They're going to fail in life. They're going to be shocked by stuff in life. It's really important to let them know that. And when they do something right, praise them. But when they're screwing up, let them know that they're screwing up. And don't give them a trophy for striking out 3 times in a baseball game. So when I get out of the University of Pennsylvania, my goal was pretty much as I've indicated to you. And I had no idea. I was going to Channel 12, Channel 3 in Philadelphia, Channel 6, seeing what I could get. You know, I'll do anything. I'll drive a truck. I had been in the National Guard for 6 months, you know, basic training, so I didn't have to worry about being drafted, which was good. And I was making a little bit of progress. The phone rang, and like so many things in life, you know, one phone call can change your life. And what happened was that I got recruited by a company in Lancaster, PA, which is a big company, a Fortune 500 company. At the time, it was called Armstrong Cork Company. Now it's Armstrong World Products. I'm sure, you know, the very ceiling on your house or your tile could come from them. Anyway, so, and they wanted me because of my background in writing to work in the public relations department. So I took this job, and there were special stage shows that had to be done. And I rationalized, well, that's sort of like show business. And now I wanted to live with my parents and I can buy a car. And after about 3 or 4 weeks at Armstrong, I was, for the first time in my life, really, truly unhappy. I didn't like the job. I now had a car payment. I now had an apartment. I now had a lease. And I just didn't like the whole corporate world that I was in. And the first major lesson that I learned there was, that I share with people, is that I was settling. It's a very important question to ask yourself or others, you know, your children, people you care about, people you want to mentor. You know, am I settling now for something? Because it can be a very slippery slope. You know, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, you settle, and then you turn around, you know, 18 years later, and you realize you haven't been happy for 18 years because it all came from settling too soon. So how I got out of Armstrong, because I didn't really know. I'm the first generation to graduate from college. I hadn't had any internships. They weren't popular back then in the early 60s. So what happened was fate stepped in. And really the second lesson that I like to share is that there are times in life when you truly can have an epiphany, when you can have, like the French call it a coup de foudre, a bolt of lightning. And you can either take advantage of that, or you can be a person who said, you know, I once really had a good idea, but not make it happen. So the epiphany that I had was this. I was walking down the hall on the way to the men's room at Armstrong on one, you know, another really, really boring day. And 2 of my colleagues, guys I liked a lot, they were very funny guys. In fact, one of them I had known from working in Ocean City, who came down, was working in Armstrong at my suggestion because he had been working for Alan Funt and Canada Camera for $100 a week and had 2 children and couldn't afford them. I said, come down here, make some money and see what you want to do. Anyway, he and a coworker were doing a comedy routine. Now, these days in show business, there really isn't any premier comedy routine. But back then, in the late 60s, well, Martin and Lewis had been retired for 10 years. And you had Rowan and Martin. You could still see Abbott and Costello. You could still see Laurel and Hardy. Stiller and Mira, Ben Stiller's mother and father had a comedy team. Mike Nichols and Elaine May. There were many, many comedy teams doing sketch comedy, like you see on Saturday Night Live, 2 characters doing comedy. And that's what these men had written. They were doing a routine for a couple secretaries, and something about it intrigued me. So I stopped and watched. And when it was over, I said, "What is that?" And they said, we hit our jobs more than you do. You know, we're just writing these comedy routines. I said, "Do another one." And they started into this routine about a toll taker on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And the language was funny. The timing was good. And I had always been interested in comedy at Lincoln High School, which had a huge effect on me. As Eric indicated, I was in a comedy team with my late friend, John Helsel. At Penn, I was in a comedy. So I love comedy. In fact, the book that we're going to talk about later is like 285 pages of comedy writing. So in the middle of this routine about the toll taker, I had this blinding revelation, this epiphany. We'll quit our jobs. We'll go into show business. I'll be their agent, and we'll get out of Armstrong. And 6 months later, those 2 guys, thanks to my work on their behalf and their amazing talent, made their national television debut 6 months later on the Merv Griffin Show. And after that show, we had a deal with Merv Griffin, which would be like being on the Ellen DeGeneres show. These days, a very popular daytime talk show. Merv said, "I like your material so much, Tom and Jay, that I'd like to essentially offer you 2 more appearances." So we had that in the bag. We all went back and we quit our jobs at Armstrong. And that's how I got into show business. So for 3 years, so the lesson there is, when you have this coup de foudre, follow it. Don't be a person who said, "I once had a really good idea." So for 3 years, now I'm in show business. I'm having a great time. Remember though, my dream is to have my own show someday, but I'm not really thinking about that. Tom and Jay were on the Ed Sullivan Show. They were on the Joey Bishop Show. They were doing extremely, we made more money, the 3 of us, the first year in show business because of their writing and their performing ability than we had collectively at Armstrong. So we were doing very well. And about 3 years in, I was set to move to California because I knew, we knew, that, the heart of show business, the heart of comedy writing, television is really evolving to California by 1969. And I was home for Thanksgiving because I've been doing a lot of traveling on the road with the team. Was named Patchett and Tarsus, Tom Patchett and Jay Tarsus. Anyway, after Thanksgiving at the house there on Walker Street in Philadelphia, I'm in the kitchen with my sister, my mother, washing dishes. We didn't have a dishwasher. And I think my mother's washing and my sister and I are drying. And my mother turns to me and says, "Are you happy doing what?" This is a very important lesson here. My mother turns to me, knowing my lifelong dream. "Are you happy doing what you're doing?" "Yeah." "Pushing for the boys, the comedy team?" "Yeah." She said, "Is that really your deepest aspiration, your heart's desire?" And I looked at her and she said, "I thought you always wanted to have your own show. Is this really your deepest aspiration?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Don't forget that." And walked out of the kitchen. There I'm at Thanksgiving. I'm standing there with a towel, a dish. Don't forget that. So there's a bit of a lesson from a parent, a friend, when you really know somebody and you see that they may be going off course in pursuit of their dream, speak up. So nothing changed instantly. It wasn't like an instant thing. My mother said that and I changed my life, but she reminded me of a crucial thing. About 6 weeks later, I was working my day job at WCAU TV, being a talent coordinator, because as my father said, growing up in Northeast Philadelphia, you hustle for a living. So not only was I managing the comedy team, but I had a day job. And the day job was as talent coordinator on a morning talk show at Channel 10. And Debbie Miller, who would go on in her career to be the most successful female agent in the history of the William Morris office, was working at KYW. At that time, 1969, KYW had the Mike Douglas Show in the basement, being produced by Woody Fraser and Roger Ailes as a young producer of the Mike Douglas Show. On the second floor, Tom Snyder did a show called Contact. Well, and Debbie Miller worked for Mike Douglas. And Tom Snyder was set to move to California to do a show out there. So they had this open space on Channel 3 at 9 in the morning. They took Debbie off of the, I like working with a camera like this. You can do stuff here you can't do on time. They took Debbie off of the Mike Douglas Show and gave her the objective of creating a morning talk show, finding a host and creating a morning talk show, staffing a morning talk show. So because Tom and Jay, the comedy team, had been on the Douglas Show 3 times, she met me. She saw that I was this hotshot manager who helped launch this team. And there was an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer about Northeast Philadelphia guy launches comedy team, because these guys were breaking national, right? So Debbie Miller calls me and takes me to lunch at the Marriott Hotel there on City Line Avenue, and makes me a big offer. She says, look, I know you're managing the comedy team. This will not affect that. I'm offering you another day job. She says, we're starting a new program to replace Tom Snyder. And we're going to find a host. Then we're going to have 5 people, one of whom will be on every day as a regular. And I'd like you to be my associate producer. You're a talent coordinator here now. I'll upgrade you. You'll be number 2. Then she says to me, I think you have it within you to be a great producer. I'm not bragging. That's what she said to me. I'd like to mentor you. I've been trained by Roger Ailes. I've been trained by Woody Fraser. And I said, Debbie, thank you, but I'm set to move to California with Tom and Jay. And I got 3 years invested in their career, and I know we're really going to go well. And she said, I understand that, but I really think you're making a mistake, because this show on Channel 3, you can really learn to be a television producer. I said, no, Debbie, I can't do it. And then she asked me the question that changed my life. She said, okay, I understand that. How's this for a negotiating question? I understand that. She says, but let me ask you this before we finish lunch. What would it take for you to stay? Right? Okay. So with my mother's words still ringing in my head, is this your deepest aspiration? Is this your heart's desire? I said, okay, I'll make a deal with you. I'll take the job of being the associate producer. The comedy team will have to go to the West Coast, and I'll have to give them up. I can't manage them from Philadelphia if they're on the West Coast. We'll find another manager for them, but I'll only do it if you let me be one of those 5 people who appears on television once a week. She says, done. And I said, I'll be Mr. Weekend. I'll come on every Friday and tell people what to do on the weekend. So next lessons, listen to that. Listen to that question. What would it take for you to stay? If you see a possibility in someone, and really, she did this because she wanted to mentor me. She needed a step, right? So I stayed at KYW TV. I learned a lot about television producing on a show called McLean and Company. The comedy team went to the West Coast. They went from being managed by unknown manager Bill Boggs, making all of his calls from his father's black rotary phone, the only phone in the house, to Bernie Brillstein with a big office on Sunset Boulevard. The comedy team stopped performing, saw that they could focus on writing and end up being the head writers for the Bob Newhart Show, wrote for Mary Tyler Moore, wrote the first two Muppet movies, created Alf, Days and Nights of Molly Dodd. So they did extremely well. And had I gone with them to the West Coast, more than likely I would, maybe own this building that we have an apartment in today. But I have no regrets about that whatsoever. So in North Carolina, I had a show called Southern Exposure with Bill Boggs, and then went on to do all the other things I talked about. And one of the things I want to, before I get into my book a little bit, which flows from this, years ago, when I interviewed Frank Sinatra, but there's a whole other story and how that came to be. He did his first interview on a talk show with me, and the longest interview of his career. You can see a little bit of it on Bill Boggs TV. I got to know him, and one day, and every once in a while, I get a note that when he was in New York, he got up so late that my show came on at that point at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I was like the Today Show for him. I would get a note, and one thing led to another, and I ran into him at an event, and he wanted to know all about Yitzhak Rabin, the former Prime Minister of Israel, who had been on. Are you signaling me?
No, I'm scratching my head.
Scratch. Right. It might be the old Lincoln High School Malay sign there. Anyway, one thing led to another. Sinatra was disappointed that I really didn't know more about Yitzhak, what had motivated Yitzhak Rabin. He didn't want to know about the politics of Israel. He was interested in, he said, look, in that country of Israel, all those tough men and women, why did this guy rise to the top? And I had no answer. And so he said, you should keep a journal. You're meeting great people every day. This is paraphrasing. And in the beginning of my career, when I was with Tommy Dorsey, I'd take notes, Buddy Rich and stuff like that. So I actually, for years, have been keeping a journal of people I've met and what I've learned from them. That actually led to a book I wrote in 2008 called, I'll show it to you. Whoops, that's not good. I just spilled my drink all over. We'll have to blot that up when we're finished. Successful people reveal how they made it to the top. Here are some of the things over the years I've learned from these people. To make sure my speaker hopefully is waterproof. Just a minute, just a second. All right. Okay, David Brenner. Bill, you can live your life two ways, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. When all is said and done, I want to be able to say, I've had a career and a life of discipline and not regret. Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi started a career as a street performer in San Francisco. Whoopi, how did it all happen? I mean, a street performer, they're annoying. You walk by them, you think you got to give them money. He said, look, I didn't know. All I wanted to do is say to myself, I'll walk out, take a step onto the pavement and try. I'll just try. Ralph Lauren started selling ties and built that into a multi-million-dollar business. What business ingredient? What was going on in your head that enabled you to do this? He said, because I focused what on most displeased me, I got people to rise to my level of perfection. Or Richard Branson, who dropped out of school to sell records because he was so into music. Remember the original record stores, Virgin Music? I enjoyed taking risks too much to worry about failing. It's a big component of success, of people taking risks and not being afraid to fail in the process of taking risks. Diane von Furstenberg, delegate everything except that which only you can do, right? John McEnroe, my father told me one thing, you're only going to get out of it what you put into it. Joe Torre, Bill, one lesson I learned in my career as a manager, application is the key. What do you mean by that, Joe? Well, if I tell the third base coach, this is a way to do something, and I go over it a couple times, and I come in the next day, and he's not doing it, then he's not applied what I taught him, it's like a waste of my time. Muhammad Ali, anything is possible, Bill, if you're willing to pay the price. Jim Cramer from Mad Money, believe in belief. Believe you can exceed your own level of accomplishment. And I'll wrap it up with Sophia Loren, who's just come back out of 10 years of being inactive. I won't say retirement. And Sophia Loren had one rule to live by. One rule, she told me. I get up in the morning and I say to myself, I'm only going to do things that I approve of today. Okay. So that's a little bit of the overview of my career. And the thing that I think connected Eric and me after 62 years was that in May, what a wonderful time that was to release a book. In May, this book, The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog, as told to Bill Boggs, with a little warning on the cover, politically incorrect humor, was published by Post Hill Press, long time veteran publishing house. And if this book is not a memoir and it's not an autobiography, but it's about a dog on a talk show host program in North Carolina who becomes a big star. And the basic fictional idea, it's the second book of fiction I wrote. The first one was actually optioned by Renee Zellweger for a movie that never got made. So it's not like, you know, oh, I just suddenly wanted to do something I'd never done before. Anyway, The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog is told to Bill Boggs. Eric, you've spent some time reading the book. Why don't you take over? We'll talk a little bit about it. I want to encourage, it's with the Christmas season coming up. Let me tell you, that this is the best work of my life. The book comes out in May, in the height of the pandemic, when people wouldn't even open the front door. Every bookstore closes. 5 engagements of major speeches around the country, they all get canceled. So here I am in early December, still out hawking my book, because after a couple months go by, the publishing house moves on to other books. Anyway, go ahead, Eric.
Oh, I thought the book was very interesting, to say the least. And of course, I could see that the book was sort of following your career path. And it was very interesting. How did you bring Spike into it? Tell us.
I had a dog named Spike the Wonder Dog. It was on that show, Southern Exposure in North Carolina. Got killed by a drunk driver before I came up to New York. The dog was great. People loved him. The dog got more mail than I did. When I had to announce on the show the dog was killed, you wouldn't believe what happened. Extremely popular. So about 5 years ago, when my last TV show, My Generation, went off the air, I said to Jane, I'm not chasing, I've had 19 different television shows. I'm not chasing any more work on television. I'm going to focus on something I can control, writing. And I had the idea, what if the dog hadn't gotten killed and had come to New York in today's world with a guy sort of like me, a fun-loving talk show host, and what if that dog became a big TV and social media star, so big that he gets kidnapped off the street, thrust into an international dog fighting ring, and ends up having to use his instinctive survival to survive. But the dog, and this is the key to understanding the book, is it's narrated by the dog. This is a dog story like The Art of Racing in the Rain, or it's been, the action scenes have been favorably compared, not by me, but to a couple of reviewers, to Jack London, The Call of the Wild. So this is in the genre of satirical comedy, irreverent comedy, and it's told from the viewpoint of a dog. And one of the reviews, the late Winston Groom, who wrote Forrest Gump, his review is essentially Bill Boggs and his friend Spike unleashed comedic wizardry in this madcap, highly entertaining satirical novel. Spike may be fiction's funniest canine. That's what it is. So it's narrated by a dog that's been speaking to me in my head for 4 years. I have a dog speaking to me. I'm not son of Sam. He's in prison.
Yeah. Hey, does anybody have any questions they'd like to put up to Bill? Oh, Oh, bunch of silence right now.
I noticed that. I did.
Yeah. Oh, they're usually a quiet bunch.
I have a question.
Well, that's because he was so
Eric.
informative.
Eric, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Let me get myself here. I watched a couple of the interviews on YouTube, and I was just curious of all of the people that you have interviewed. I'm sure you have stories of, and probably this is a question you get. What surprised you most, or what was the most difficult part about doing the interviews? Some of these people are really strong with their. I was listening to the Jerry Lewis one, and a lot of there's so much personality and beliefs coming out. I thought maybe you could share something.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is, thank you. I appreciate the question. Ultimately, it's like anything else, whether you're a pilot, if you're pilot of an airplane, you have your skill set. And I used to look at the shows. Who am I speaking with? What's the name of that
That's
gentleman?
Lamont.
Lamont.
I would look at the show sometimes like I'm a pilot of a plane, right? I'm going to take this plane off. I don't know what's going to go through rough weather. I'm going to land the plane because I know what I'm doing. And that's the best metaphor I can use. I mean, some days were easy, some days were more difficult. Some days the guests made me a little nervous. Some days I had to really pry things out of the guests. But the number one thing that I always focus on was making my guests comfortable. And I think that the extent that they could be comfortable helped enable me to interview them. But you know, it's really what people see on the YouTube channel. People can write in comments, and I see someone comments the Carly Simon interview, which I did for the greatest interview with Carly Simon I have ever seen. Literally, the next comment is, "This guy, me, is a real asshole. He has no idea what he's doing." So, it's true. I get to read. There was a singer from Philadelphia named Phyllis Hyman. She was exactly my height, 6 feet tall. She was in Sophisticated Ladies. She lived around the corner from me, and we were great friends. We didn't date, we just were friends. Every once in a while, I remember the two of us went to see Lena Horne together. Well, my interview with Phyllis Hyman, a couple of people say, "This guy really hates her." What people see, all is illusion. All is illusion. So what you see with me and Jerry Lewis can be completely different than what somebody else sees. The experience with Jerry Lewis was most interesting because I had 2 interviews with Jerry Lewis. Only one is on the YouTube channel. The other one, my agent lost. Yeah, a 90-minute interview with Jerry Lewis. I know. It's not good. But anyway, I was a little nervous. But at the first commercial break, I said, "Jerry, I'm nervous." "Why?" He goes. I said, "You know, I've been a fan since I was 5 years old." And I think if you tell, that's really only Jerry Lewis. I was nervous a little while. Gore Vidal, I was always sort of nervous with him because he's so smart. I always felt like a moron, you know, like I'm interviewing this guy and he's brilliant. I'm like this moron. But the analogy is the airplane, taking off an airplane. Coming back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Bill, just a point of interest, Lamont is also an author.
Oh, good.
He has one fabulous book you might want to get. It's called Tattooed in the Cradle.
That's a good title.
Yeah.
Tattooed.
It's not mine. I got it several years ago, wandering around in a bookstore, and came across this book, and it said in the beginning, "We're all tattooed in the cradle with the superstitions of the tribe," and that's where I borrowed the quote. I thought it was a great title.
And it really is a good. Is that on? What's the book about?
I was a hospice chaplain and a family therapist, and it's about spirituality for dying people.
Good for you.
Thank you.
I know my mother died at age 96, 10 years ago. And I was really, really grateful for hospice. You know, anytime I could speak on behalf of what that did for my mother, because my mother was mentally as sharp at age 96, as she had always been, but her body had just given out. And she ended up having one bad last month of her life where she had to go into a nursing home. And the mind is fine, but my mother said to me, the first day I visited her in a nursing home, she said, I just want to go. I don't want to be here. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And I don't think that there was a road out of the nursing home. And so I said to the nurse, the regular, not the hospice nurse, she was just I said, you know, you're going to talk to my mother and you may think, oh, she's depressed because she wants to die. I said, my mother has consistently said to me for the last years of her life, I'm ready to go. You know, she had been in an assisted living facility. She wasn't depressed. She got dressed every morning and looked great, but she was ready. She said, I'm old, I'm ready to go. And the nurse, the registered nurse said, you know, maybe if we look at our records over the weekend, come back on Monday, maybe she'd qualify for hospice. And she did. And thus we were able to speed her exit to death so that she didn't have to suffer the indignities of a bedpan and things like that, which she literally said to me about the nursing home, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life. And like every life, she had some tough shots. So God bless you. Good for you.
The quote was from Oliver Wendell Holmes.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
The quote was from Oliver Wendell Holmes. Tattooed
We are all tattoos, repeat it again.
Tattooed in the cradle with the superstitions of the tribe.
I gotta write that one down. I always have I don't even know if you remember, Eric, but Charles Williams, our principal at Lincoln, always said, if you think of something, write it down. And I've been carrying I have hundreds of these notebooks with my notes in it.
Good.
Yeah.
That's great.
Bill,
Yes.
how do we acquire Spike if we want to?
Well, just Amazon, just type in the name Bill Boggs book on Amazon and it comes right up. It's available in hardback. It's only $19, right? Hardback, Kindle, and audio version in which I participate. I didn't want to narrate the whole book, but we got a really good narrator, but I do a couple of certain parts of the book.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Yeah, it's a good read. Dick, you've been awfully quiet today. You usually have questions coming out both ears. You're muted.
He's stunned. He's stunned in the quietness.
There we go.
There you go.
Actually, I was really impressed with the fact that you did what you wanted to do. It took me a little bit longer. I worked for a company for 20 years, and I always wanted to do things, but I was never allowed to do it. Unfortunately, they went out of business. And then I started my own company doing the things that I wanted to do. And that was 25 years ago.
Yeah, good.
And people said, well, why'd you start On Target Consultants? And my answer was, because I finally was able to do what I wanted to do. I didn't have to get permission from somebody else.
Yeah, it's like that quote, one door closes, another one opens. Oh, there's one thing I wanted to say when I was doing like the more formal part of my talk.
Thank you, Eric.
One thing I learned as a talk show host is listen with and this applies to, this could be your next door neighbor, it could be your children, your grandchildren, your spouse, anybody. Listen with the intention of understanding, not immediately responding. Because so many times as someone's talking to you, you know exactly what you're going to say. Take the beat and really listen to them, maybe with a touch of empathy. Listen with the intention of understanding, not immediately responding.
You know, Dale Carnegie said something like that. He was talking about one time that he was at a conference and this guy sat down next to him and one word was said and the guy went on and talked for 20 minutes. And he says, I said one word. And at the end of it, the guy commented and wrote a note and said, what a wonderful conversationalist you are. He had only said one word.
That's good.
I have a question.
Go.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. Thanks, Bill. I've so appreciated this time that you're spending with us today. Thank you. My question is, I heard you speaking about, the discipline and that being the choice. And I find with the discipline, there's always a degree of sacrifice. So being in your line of work, where does that sacrifice happen in your mind?
Well, thank you, Lisa. You're a realtor. I have a realtor question, but I'm a writer now. Okay, this is what I do. If somebody offers me a job on TV, or if I want to do more podcasts, I can do that. But so the answer there is the discipline is to block out the time to do the work, because it's not like I go in. I'm not a writer. I don't have like Gay Talese, the writer. He has a big townhouse. He gets up every morning. He gets dressed. He puts on a suit, a tie. He walks to the back of the house and writes for 3 hours. Somehow that's not my life. I've always been a busy guy, so I try to just say I'm blocking out the time. And today, for example, I'm caring for my beloved Jane, who had a little procedure done here. And when she's resting and down, I'll turn off, the phones will be turned off, and I'll just focus on writing for like 2 hours. I believe in deep focus. And deep focus is where you really are not checking your phone. You're not going to be interrupted. I take the phone off the hook. That's very important for me. Deep focus is when you're really into it and into the flow, right? And your phone can beep and you can look over it like that. And it takes a while to, literally, psychologists would tell you to get back into it. So my reality question is this: based on the pandemic and people fleeing New York, and I lived in New York since 1975, have you seen an uptick in Ambler real estate purchases?
Yes, there's been an uptick in prices and people doing whatever they need to do to get into this area.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's so. And how would you account? What would you think leads accounts for that? Is it New York, you think?
It's not only New York. There's people coming out of the city of Philadelphia. What I've heard from several clients who are moving around here is because I work in all the suburbs. They say I was just too close. I didn't have the space I needed to work from home. So a lot of it was a need for more space and some separation from family and neighbors so that they could maintain their job at home because their workplaces weren't allowing them in. So the majority of it was just now working from home. So, I mean, maybe 10% of my clients this year were from New York, and they just said there was no reason for us to live there and pay the prices anymore. We're remote now. We know that we're remote in the future. So we got out of New York because of the taxes and the cost. So
yeah, the cost of living in New York, Jane and I still maintain an apartment in New York. We're going to be giving it up because our life is essentially between East Hampton, where I have a home, and the Palm Beach pad. And the biggest check we write every month is a New York rent on the apartment. So I don't.
Bill,
Go ahead, Eric.
before you go any further, Gay Talese is an Ambler, right? He is from Ambler, Pennsylvania.
No, I love Ambler.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And that's where Gay lived. That's his family. Is Ambler.
Yeah.
Go.
I don't remember what I was saying. I was talking about, I've always been, the whole time I lived in Manhattan, since 1975, I've always been a Philadelphian observing New York. And people have said, oh, I'm a New York insider, I'm Mr. New York. I've heard all that crap. But I've always looked at it like there was this view among New Yorkers, like this is the only place in the world to be, which is complete and utter nonsense. It doesn't mean that it's not exciting. It doesn't mean that it's filled with restaurants and culture, and it doesn't mean all of that exists. But to take on the view that this is the only place to be, when I went to New York from High Point, I actually had I had a hugely successful show in High Point. It was syndicated in the South. It was just, we beat the Today Show for 3 years. My life was great. I played tennis every day. I lived in a rented house, had property behind me, went running with my dogs. I came up to Manhattan, and people couldn't believe that I had enjoyed myself in North Carolina. Couldn't understand how could that be? And that's an example in the book. I don't know if you've gotten there, Rick, in the book where the woman is interviewing him for Dog World magazine, and she's talking to his master. Of course, but that was only North Carolina. How could that have meant anything? Directly out of that experience. Oh, Jesus. Eventually, I'll just knock over everything.
Any other questions for Bill?
It won't be long.
Might as well ask him while we have him here.
Was that a question? I'm sorry, I leaned back.
No, I think we've run out of questions, Bill.
Good.
Uh,
I've run out of me. I've run out of me, so.
Yeah, it's really been neat catching up with you again, Bill. It's been a long time, like you said, since 1958.
Yeah, Jesus, Eric. You
Yeah.
certainly look wonderful. Are you playing any sports these days? You were such a great athlete in high school.
No more. I was into very active bike riding, and weekends come, I'd ride 50 miles on Saturday, 50 miles on Saturday and Sunday. And I went out one afternoon with a fellow Rotarian, and we ran into some trouble on the trail, and he ran into some mud, fell in front of me. I put on my brakes real hard and went over the handlebars, busted my collarbone. And my wife has not let me on the bike since then. So I was really into the bike riding, which is very enjoyable.
I love bike ride. We have a bike here. I used to love riding bikes all around Northeast Philadelphia. I once rode all the way from Northeast Philadelphia, downtown Philadelphia, and back to Independence Hall. But now, as I've gotten older, I'm more fearful of traffic. I don't like, in fact, I won't ride on the road if I know traffic's behind me. I have to ride toward traffic. I wasn't like that at all.
We have so many bike trails that are not on the road, along the Schuylkill River, along the Delaware River. We've got all sorts of trails that you never have to go out on the road.
Well, I tell you, as I said, I love the Ambler area, the Montgomery County. It's just a beautiful part of the world. So look, Jane is back from the doctor. I'm going to take care of her. Thank you. If you want to subscribe to Bill Boggs TV, it's free. The book, The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog. And I'll be happy to come back sometime, although I think you've had enough of me for quite a while.
No, you're fantastic.
Come back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal.
Thank you.
Great.
Good health. Stay careful.
Thank you so much.
Stay safe.
Oh, wait, I have one other thing. Eric, are you there? Where's
Yeah, I'm
Eric?
here. I'm
Eric,
here.
still wearing the Lincoln High School ring.
Are you really? The only.
And this watch, a graduation present from my father.
Oh my gosh.
I only wear this out, but the ring, when I put this on, I hear the Rocky theme.
Yeah. There you go. There you go.
All right, folks.
For those
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
For those of you that don't know, Rocky went to our high school for 1 year.
That's correct.
So.
Okay, bye-bye.
Wow.
Good
Thank
luck,
you, Bill.
everybody. Take care of
Thank you
yourself.
so much.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Hey, Jan, could I have the microphone just for a minute?